Millionaire returns home believing everything was in order, but looking toward street surprises his little one rummaging through garbage, with broken voice confessing something leaving him breathless. What discovers in that instant will change his life forever. And before continuing, allow me to wish you health and peace. Tell me, from what country and what time are you watching this story? Door slam resonated through entire house like muffled thunder, but nobody came out to receive him. Julian Herrera left keys on white marble table next to Mont Blanc pen had used hours before to sign $1 million contract. Tired gesture spoke more than words, seemed to carry weight of entire city on shoulders. Echo of steps mixed with distant murmur of turned-on television. Sign wasn't alone, yet silence wrapped like coat of ice. Crossed hallway decorated with contemporary painters' paintings and imported Turkish carpets. Everything smelled of luxury, success, life built on figures and endless meetings. At end, kitchen door was ajar. Julian thought would find usual there, aroma of freshly made coffee or clinking of cutlery. But when gently pushed door, what saw pierced like knife. Daughter Lucia, barely 6 years old, was kneeling before trash bin, little hands buried between stained papers and greasy wrappers. Dark curls fell over face wet with tears, and on trembling lips appeared piece of stale bread rescued from bottom of basket. What city are you watching this video from and what time is it? By the way, if you're enjoying my videos, I'd be so happy if you could subscribe to my channel and like this video. If this story has hooked you so far, subscribe to channel. What comes after this moment is even more intense and you won't want to miss it. For instant, Julian believed was dreaming. Closed and opened eyes, hoping image would dissolve like bad nightmare. But reality remained there, cruel and naked, hitting him in middle of kitchen equipped with high-end appliances and double-door refrigerator overflowing with food. Contrast was unbearable. Hungry child searching among scraps in environment of insulting abundance. Julian remained paralyzed, heart pounding in chest. Not even in worst memories had imagined something similar. His little one, child who should receive care and tenderness, searched for food as if were on streets, and not in mansion with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Lucia was so concentrated on pushing aside peels and remains that didn't perceive father's presence. Clumsy movements of disarming innocence broke soul. Julian wanted to speak, but voice broke before being born. Took one step, then another, as if each movement weighed tons. Finally, with dry throat, managed to murmur, "Daughter, what are you doing?" Sound shook everything. Child turned abruptly, startled, still holding stale bread between little hands. Large eyes, clouded with fear and shame, fixed on father's. That look was like broken mirror, reflecting hunger, loneliness, and abandonment. Julian felt knot in throat almost preventing breathing. Time seemed to stop in that kitchen. Lucia lowered head and between sobs murmured with barely audible voice, "Dad, I'm hungry. Nobody gave me dinner." Those words pierced like invisible daggers. Each syllable was direct blow to conscience. How could it be? How had allowed something like this to occur under own roof? Rolex watches, Mercedes cars in garage, aged wines in cellar, everything became useless before daughter's hunger. Julian immediately knelt and hugged forcefully, as if wanting to merge with her. Felt fragile little body trembling in arms while stale bread remained trapped between small fingers like treasure impossible to release. Tried to say, "Forgive me, daughter," but words choked in throat. Only thing could do was hold tighter until felt tears running uncontrollably down cheeks. Lucia looked at him desperately, like someone finding refuge amid storm. And still, on lips remained phrase hitting harder than everything before. "It's just when you're not here, she doesn't give me anything." Innocence with which said it was devastating. There was no resentment, no manipulation, only raw truth of child suffering in silence. Julian clenched teeth, bitter fire igniting in chest. That confession not only pointed to Elena, woman he'd trusted, but also to himself for absence. Echo of empty house amplified confession. Julian raised eyes and noticed how expensive objects, Italian designer coffee maker, fine crystal glasses aligned on sideboard, became mute witnesses of failure as father. World could admire triumphs, but in that instant knew had lost essential. Lucia sobbed in arms, and each tear was reminder money never substitutes presence. Julian felt floor opening beneath feet. Everything built crumbling, and yet amid that unbearable pain, certainty grew. Had arrived hour to face truth, though would destroy him. kitchen air became heavy, and Julian, with clenched jaw, forced himself to stand with daughter in arms. Echo of steps sounded different, now firmer, more determined, as advanced through hallway toward living room, and what found there would leave breathless. Echo of Lucia's words kept thundering in Julian's mind as crossed hallway with her in arms. When you're not here, she doesn't give me anything. That phrase, as innocent as devastating, had stuck in heart like thorn impossible to remove. Main living room of house received with same coldness as always. Italian leather sofas, crystal center table, and chandelier hanging like reminder of success. But all that seemed empty, almost ridiculous compared to crying still escaping from daughter's chest. On armchair, as if nothing happened, Elena Morales was reclined with mobile in hand, scrolling screen with indifference of someone having everything under control. Julian stood before her, heart palpitating with contained rage. Contrast was unbearable. Daughter in arms trembling and woman who should care for her lost in artificial world of social media. For instant, he wanted to believe there was logical explanation, something justifying abandonment. But when looked in eyes, only found coldness. "What do you have to say about this?" asked with dry voice cutting like knife. Elena slowly raised gaze, arching eyebrow with annoyed gesture. Put phone in Louis Vuitton bag resting on sofa and murmured, "She's surely exaggerating. Children invent things to get attention. Maybe didn't want to eat what I prepared." Words fell like stones. Julian couldn't believe what heard. Lucia, clinging to neck, shook head forcefully, and between sobs managed to say, "Not true. Dad, she never gives me anything when you're not here." That testimony so clear, so honest, left room wrapped in unbearable silence. Julian felt something breaking inside. Were no longer assumptions, was naked truth on own daughter's lips. Woman tried to smile, but nervous eyes betrayed. With empty voice insisted, misinterpreting Julian. "You know I love her. Call love leaving her hungry?" Interrupted with hardness surprising even himself. "Call love condemning child to search through garbage while you rest with mobile in hand?" Elena retreated in armchair, incapable of holding gaze. Lucia hid face in father's chest, seeking refuge. Rage and guilt mixed inside Julian. Fire consuming and propelling at same time, reflected in Rolex watch wore on wrist. Symbol of success now seeming cruel mockery. What good were Swiss bank accounts? Mercedes cars in garage if daughter knew taste of hunger. Elena, desperate, attempted last resort. Rose from armchair with painted tears on face and begged, "Julian, please give me another chance. Won't happen again." But Lucia, with broken little voice, whispered in father's ear, "Dad, don't want her to stay." That plea was like shot direct to heart. Julian understood in that instant there was no turning back. Love isn't measured in broken promises or hollow words, but in actions. And actions had made clear who was failing. Room's silence became unbearable. Julian breathed deeply, child trembling in arms, and pointed to door with free hand. "You have nothing more to say. This is not your place." Elena paled. Tried to approach, but Julian raised voice like hammer thundering in each corner of house. "Not one more step." Echo of that order made woman stop dead. Lucia hugged tighter, feeling finally someone defended. Julian knew what came after would be painful, but decision was made. Everyone's breathing seemed contained. Elena sobbed. Julian burned with rage. Lucia clung with renewed trust. And amid that unbearable tension, Julian understood battle just beginning. Echo of order, not one more step, still resonated on room's walls when Julian felt tension suffocating. Breathing was agitated, as if had run miles, but hadn't moved from same place. With Lucia still in arms, stared fixedly at Elena, who cried theatrically, though eyes betrayed nervousness more than repentance. Silence became unbearable. Each expensive piece of furniture, each designer lamp seemed to mock him. Had worked entire life to fill house with status symbols. Swiss watches in display cases, baccarat crystal glasses, Persian rugs, and yet essential. Daughter's laughter and calm slipped through fingers. "Lucia doesn't need excuses. Needs care," said Julian with deep voice, broken but firm. I've been blind for too long." Elena took step forward, extending hand. "Julian, can we fix it, I swear. Was mistake. But Lucia, with little face wet from tears, hid face again in father's chest. That simple gesture was more forceful than any word. Julian stepped back and pointed to door. "Leave. This house is no longer your place." Elena's door slam on leaving vibrated on walls like final thunder. For an instant, Julian felt mansion had become even emptier, but in arms was only thing mattered. Caressed daughter's hair and held tenderly, swearing in silence would never again allow something similar. Child looked at him with still trembling eyes, but also with spark of hope. That gleam gave blow of reality. Wasn't enough to throw out Elena, had to face himself. Absence had been other face of abandonment. While touring house in silence, images from past assaulted like lightning. Remembered Lucia's birthday when was barely 4 years old. He was overseas closing financial deal and sent expensive porcelain doll with golden bow. Child before table without candles asked caretaker if dad would come to blow with her. Answer was dry no, and that image now hit with unbearable force. "Forgive me, daughter," whispered while steps rocked. "Won't fail you again," reached kitchen. Julian sat her on high chair and crouched to her height. Contrast was brutal. Imported black granite countertop, limited edition espresso machine, and child with empty tummy waiting for something as simple as dinner. Lucia, with timid voice, asked, "Really not coming back?" Julian caressed cheek and responded, "No, sweetheart. From now on will be you and me." Little one pressed small hands against father's shirt, as if wanting to ensure that promise was real. And Julian, with broken soul but determined, knew this was first stone of new beginning. However, amid that apparent calm, even sharper memory pierced again. That afternoon when had seen photo of deceased wife holding Lucia as baby. In daughter's eyes still shone same tenderness as mother, like silent reminder of everything had neglected. Knot in throat grew. Echo of door slam still floated in house. But what thundered most was Lucia's innocent voice. "Dad, I'm hungry." That phrase would keep pursuing until demonstrated with actions could be different. Child yawned, exhausted from crying, and rested head on shoulder. Julian carried again with slow steps resonating on hallway's cold marble. Took toward room while in mind repeated single thought. Luxury had lost all meaning. Now only valuable thing was her. And though house was wrapped in silence, Julian knew that night would be beginning of most difficult battle of life. Redeem himself as father. Dawn fell over city and mansion was plunged in thick silence. Julian remained sitting on daughter's bed edge, watching how Lucia slept with eyes still swollen from crying. Lamp's dim light reflected calm little face, and for first time in long while, Julian realized that innocent face was greatest treasure. Rose slowly and walked toward living room. Echo of steps resonated on cold marble, and each corner seemed to accuse. Dining table with German silver tableware, Swiss clock marking hours with impeccable tick-tock, Bentley parked in garage. Everything screamed material success, but essential had remained in ruins. In living room solitude, memories assaulted violently. Saw image of forgotten birthday. Lucia, barely 5 years old, waited in kitchen next to cake bought at any supermarket. Single badly lit candle flickered amid silence. He, on other hand, was in Geneva signing contract, had sent designer dress for daughter as substitute for presents. Through video recorded by nanny, saw how child blew candle alone with smile not hiding disappointment. That wound now opened again in heart. Julian brought hands to face, suffocated by guilt. How could have believed gifts replaced warmth of hug? How had let Elena become guardian of something as sacred as daughter's childhood? Memory also transported to another scene. Day when Lucia asked if would go together to cemetery to bring flowers to mother. He answered with, "Can't. Have important meeting." That answer thrown with indifference now stuck like dagger. Rose from sofa with new impulse. Walked to Lucia's room and opened nightstand drawer. There found small silver locket with photo of deceased wife hugging newborn child. Julian held between trembling fingers and tears overflowed. Locket was reminder of everything had promised and hadn't fulfilled. At that moment heard Lucia's weak voice, who'd awakened. "Dad, are you leaving again?" Julian ran to bed, knelt beside and caressed hair. "No, my life. This time not leaving. This time staying with you." Child looked fixedly, as if evaluating whether those words were real or just another empty promise. Julian felt like exam couldn't fail. Millionaire's heart beat forcefully. Decision was made. Could no longer keep living between expensive watches and painful absences. Had to redeem himself. Past pointed with harshness, but future still open. Lucia snuggled beside and closed eyes with sigh of relief. Julian, with locket gripped in hand, swore in silence. This would be last time daughter cried from hunger or loneliness. Room air became lighter, but also more fragile. Julian knew true challenge just beginning. Next morning arrived with different air in mansion. Julian, who had barely slept, woke early and went straight to kitchen. There, instead of usual aroma of coffee prepared by employee or trays ready served on silver tableware, silence reigned. Opened double-door refrigerator and stared at shelves overflowing with products as if were reproach. Fresh eggs, sourdough bread, whole milk. Simple things paradoxically daughter hadn't received in days. Lucia appeared barefoot, dragging teddy bear and with disheveled hair. Rubbed eyes with timid gesture. Julian greeted with nervous smile, trying to sound natural. "Today I prepare breakfast." Child looked incredulous, as if those words were too good to be true. Julian turned on stove and with clumsy movements broke eggs in steel pan. Oil sizzled and warm smell began to fill kitchen. Lucia sat at high table observing each gesture of father as if didn't want to miss detail. He, accustomed to signing contracts with Mont Blanc pen or wearing Rolex at board meetings, felt strange beating eggs and cutting bread, but there was new tenderness in each movement. Upon placing plate before daughter, hands trembled more than closing $1 million deal. "Try, sweetheart." Lucia took fork and began eating with anxiety, bite after bite, as if feared would disappear. Julian watched in silence, not in throat. Each bite was mute confession of what had suffered. Tears gathered in eyes but contained so as not to disturb her. At that moment, silver locket found previous night shown on table. Julian opened and looked at photo of deceased wife with Lucia, newborn in arms. Was as if she from eternity reminded duty. "Daughter, never again will have to search for food where there isn't any," whispered, caressing cheek. Lucia raised eyes, mouth still full, and smiled for first time in long while. That timid, fragile smile illuminated kitchen more than any designer lamp. Julian felt something inside recomposing. After breakfast, decided to take to school. Himself opened garage and black Bentley gleamed under morning light. But that morning, placing Lucia in back seat, didn't feel pride of luxury but responsibility of being present father. Car could be expensive, but true treasure sat behind, adjusting belt with innocence. During journey, Julian spoke of simple things. City park, flowers soon adorning city for autumn festivities, hot chocolate with churros could share on weekend. Lucia listened in silence, gripping teddy bear, as if wanting to believe all that would be real. When arrived at school, Julian leaned toward her. "This afternoon I pick you up, okay? No driver, no excuses." Child nodded slowly. That promise was sacred pact Julian knew must fulfill at all costs. While watching her enter through school door with small backpack hanging from shoulders, Julian understood true wealth wasn't in Swiss watches or bank accounts, was in that simple instant, father accompanying daughter to class. Upon returning home, stopped instant in kitchen, still impregnated with breakfast aroma. Silver locket remained on table, shining under sun entering through window. Julian took in hand and hung around neck. Was symbol silent promise would never again fail. And yet, while adjusting locket, dark doubt crossed, would be capable of sustaining that change in world, demanding with contracts and endless meetings? Autumn advanced over city with cold, luminous air. Julian, dressed in Italian suit but without rigidity from before, walked hand in hand with Lucia through park. Fallen leaves crunched under shoes, and child laughed chasing pigeons as if had forgotten nights of hunger and silence. Julian's eyes moistened seeing her so light, so free, because each laugh was testimony we're starting anew. At nearby stand bought wafer cookies from street vendor. Lucia nibbled with pleasure while he remembered how months ago could barely look at her without feeling weight of guilt. Now each simple gesture was gift. Decided to take afterward to Main Square, where bustle of tourists and locals mixed with aroma of coffee and cured ham. At Terrace ordered hot chocolate and freshly fried churros. Served on white porcelain, nothing ostentatious, and Julian surprised to discover that simple snack moved more than dinners with silver tableware and expensive wines. Lucia looked at him with lips stained with chocolate and said with disarming sincerity, "Dad, now I really feel happy." Julian gently squeezed daughter's hand. That phrase so simple was greatest reward of life. Everything else, Bentley, Rolex, contracts signed with Mont Blanc, vanished before those 5 words. As afternoon fell, walked together toward Cathedral where city seemed to breathe history and faith. Julian lit candle with Lucia and in silence thanked for second chance life was giving. Didn't ask for more wealth or success, only strength not to fail again. Returning home, luxury car remained parked without importance. What really counted was Lucia's laughter from back seat, inventing songs and asking simple things. What flowers would plant in garden, if could make cake on Sunday, if could go again to swings. Julian answered everything with patience, discovering those conversations worth more than any business meeting. Already in mansion, dinner was improvised, hot soup and fresh bread. Sat together at table without servants or formalities. Julian served with own hands, and Lucia, upon tasting, exclaimed with joy, "Is delicious." Echo of that phrase filled house with warmth absent too long. Julian realized mansion was no longer museum of expensive objects, but home where love beginning to be reborn. When tucked in bed, Lucia handed teddy bear to care for during night. Julian hugged with solemnity, as if were treasure. Child closed eyes calmly, and he stayed beside until breathing became steady. In silence caressed silver locket hanging from neck. Was constant reminder of wife and everything lost by prioritizing work. But now also was symbol of what was building. Different life where family came first. Looked out window. City gleamed in distance with avenue lights flickering. Julian breathed deeply. Path wouldn't be easy. Temptations to return to old life would always be there. But while listening to soft breath of daughter sleeping, knew had chosen correct route. Silence was no longer cold or empty, was warm silence full of new promises. Julian closed eyes and promised once more, never again forget essential, because true wealth wasn't in banks, but in small hand had felt gripping his throughout day. In soft murmur of city never sleeping, image of father and daughter sharing hot chocolate at Main Square becomes indelible memory. Wasn't Swiss watches or luxury cars returning smile to child, but warm presence of sincere hug and fulfilled promise. And sometimes truly valuable isn't measured in numbers, but in simple moments returning us to essential. Weeks turned into months. House that once seemed fortress of isolation slowly transformed. Windows that before only let in cold light now opened to morning breeze. Rooms echoing with heavy silence began filling with small conversations, hesitant laughs, sounds of normalcy. Lucia continued showing signs of healing. What before were obligations became spaces of genuine progress. Child psychologists visited house weekly, brought exercises, patience, and warm smile reminding Lucia not all adults were threats. Together worked through recovery. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. Just healing for sake of healing. Julian changed too. Man who before hid behind contracts and business trips now organized schedule around daughter, learned to prepare pancakes way Lucia liked, with honey and fresh berries. Learned to listen to silences, understand gestures, read emotions in daughter's eyes. Learned being father meant being present in small moments. Tying shoelaces, braiding hair, sitting on floor to play with dolls. One afternoon, several months after that terrible night, they had visitor. Old family friend came for coffee. Had become trusted friend, someone Lucia felt safe around. They shared meal, stories, gentle laughter. House that once knew only tension now hosted warmth. After coffee, friend asked Lucia to show drawings. Lucia looked at father, seeking permission, reassurance. He nodded encouragingly. She ran to room and returned with stack of papers. Colorful drawings of flowers, sunshine, and always, 2 figures holding hands. Friend had tears in eyes. "She's healing," whispered to Julian. "Can see it in art, fear is fading, hope is growing." Julian's chest swelled with emotion. And Lucia, for first time in so long, felt something she'd almost forgotten. Felt worthy. Felt loved. Felt whole. If this story has moved you, leave one in comments. If you think could have been told differently, mark 0 and tell us what you feel. Lesson is clear. Love, when lived with humility and constancy, has power to heal wounds time seemed to have condemned to oblivion. Everyone deserves second chance, and everyone, rich or poor, needs home where to be accepted just as we are. Because true greatness isn't in what we possess, but in what we offer. Just like lamplit and window lights hope for nighttime traveler, gesture of kindness can guide others amid darkness. Take moment to reflect. Whom can we extend hand today? Even with small gesture, perhaps in that simple detail lies strength of renewed life. And if this story touched your heart, share it. Perhaps another, upon hearing, will remember it's never too late to start again.